I'm going to start again so that we have it well recorded. We're looking at module 3, and module 3, we're going to cover methods. And methods, we're basically going to look at 4 sub-modules here. We're going to look at defining and calling methods, method overloading, method overriding, and recursion. We'll also have a live demonstration of how to calculate methods in Java using VS Code. And in our today's presentation here, we're basically interested in first understanding what is exactly method. I said it here in that method in Java. Sometimes methods in Java is also referred as functions, just like in any other programming languages. Methods in Java also are a group of reusable codes. Now, it helps you to promote modularity and code organization. You become more consistent with your code. Now, in Java, literally, method consists of signature and method body. We're going to try to understand probably what's a signature, what a method signature means. So what we're going to look at, let's first look at method. To do the quiz. Now, this is just a typical example of how you can have parameters within a method of add that can return that the return type contains a list or a variable of a parameter. Now let's have this in this way. Let's say we have the int. You know, int, basically, we're dealing with additions in Java. Now, then when we put add, and then we put add in, that means that what you're trying to say here is that we can pass in int A, int B. So add with the open bracket, with the parenthesis, with the parameters, is basically trying to tell us that it's a method, which sometimes people also call it what? Functions in Java. Now, what it does is that this particular method signature is having the add, this add, which is basically the name, the method name, and the int is the return type. That means int will return the parameter in the list where we have additions in this parameter. So one of the key concepts that you should consider when understanding methods in Java, you should look at what they call the method signature. Now, we're going to look at method body. Now, in Java, the method body contains the code that gets executed when the method is called. And in most cases, we use with method signature, we use what we call the parameter or the parenthesis specifically. Then in the method body, we use what we call the curly braces. So in a simple term is that the method body contains the code that gets executed when a method is called. I can just write that for you. So the method body, so the method body contains the code that gets executed when the method so this is being represented with this parenthesis, while in the method signature it is being represented with that braces. So if we try to get to understand what the method body does, basically it will contain the body of the code that get executed when the method is called. Another thing that you should consider when working in Java, which is also a key concept that is related to method, is that you're going to have what they call the return type. The return type. Now, what the return type does is that it specifies the type of data which will return, which the method will return. So I just want to explain this to you. Remember, we use the void, and the void is the one which specifies the type of data that the method will return. If the method does not return the value, it returns the type is, which is a void. Now, the return type basically specifies the type of data the method will return. If a method will return the void, that's one thing that you need to understand when it comes to the return. We're going to have another concept, which you're going to call it what? Parameters. Now, parameter are literally what we refer as variables. So in Java, parameters are variables that the method can accept as input. So basically, parameters are variables that the method can accept. This means is that in the parameter listed, that's one thing that you need to consider when understanding the concept of parameters. Now, basically, we will now go and look at the method overloading and the method overriding or concepts. But let me then we can look at one simple Java method that contains that. Okay. Hopefully, we don't have any question in the comment up to this point. Arinda is saying yes, so that's along our old message. Now, let's try to finish up these 3 concepts. Actually, there are 5. No, there are 4. Let's try to look at method overloading. Of course, we will going to look at it faster because I'm going to cover method overloading. So Java is that Java allows you to define multiple methods with the same name in the class. basically, in Java, in Java, uh, okay, basically in Java, no, what I can say is that Java supports method overloading. Which basically means which actually that overloading, which allows them. So basically, Java supports method overloading. It allows you to define multiple methods with the same name in a class. Now, as long as they have different parameters, take it from me, as long as they have different parameters, Java will allow you to define multiple methods with the same name in a class. Now, there's something which I want us to look at it faster. It's called access modifiers. Access modifiers. Now, what do we mean when we talk about access modifiers? Now, methods have what they call access modifiers. Now, what are some of those modifiers that we can look at? Now, literally, public, private. So this public and private, and even what they call what? Unprotected. Now, or private, or package privates, what they call package private. Now, what it means is that these modifiers control visibility and accessibility of the method. Accessibility of the methods. Now, when you look at another concept that are under within method, is called what? Static methods. Now, what static method does is that it belongs to a class rather than a specific instance of a class. Now, they are called using the class name, not the object instance. So that's the concept that you need to understand. Basically, when looking at these key concepts. Okay, so what static means, it belongs to a class rather than a specific instance of the class. So static method belongs to a class rather than a specific instance of the class. Okay, So that is what you should focus and look at it. Now, there's something also I want you to understand, that we have what they call instance methods. Now, instance methods in Java, instance are associated with what we call an instant object. I don't know if I'm still audible or I'm still clear, but I'm seeing my network kind of showing that it's unstable. But please let me know in the chat if I'm still if my network is still okay. So now in Java, instant methods are associated with what they call instant objects, and of the classes are accessed with the instant variables or other instances. Remember, we looked at variables in Java. Now, what we're going to focus on is basically to try to conceptualize all these concepts and try to demonstrate it practically, maybe with a simple calculation here that can help us understand some of these key concepts. Is that okay? Now, I created something called a method.java. So we have a class for method.java. Now, what we are going to do is that we will create a method to add two numbers. Of course, then return the method parameters. Okay. So let's try to do that practically. So earlier on, I'd explained to you how you can play around with this. Once you create it using a VS Code, it will create for you the public class, which the class will be method. Now, remember I explained to you what this contain what? The method contain the method body, the code that gets executed when a method is what? Is called. Now we're going to write our code and then see how to execute this program. Is that okay? Now, let's have a look here. We have a public class method right from the file is saved as method.java. So we're going to add the method. It's not a constructor, but the method to add two numbers. I'm sure you already shall have remember what I talked about here. I mentioned how you can apply what they call method signature. So we are going to apply a method signature here, which is literally going to say public. It's not public static, but it's going to be public int, then add. We're going to add A and B. Then within what we call the method body, we are going to literally return AB. Now, we done with that part. The next part is we want to try one thing, is to subtract. Method to subtract two numbers. So we shall create another class, which is going to be subtract. Okay. If I have a method to subtract, we just need to close this bracket. Now what you're going to do we're going to create a public method with the instance subtract, which is literally supposed to be why did we create this?
Daddy, are you okay?
Action. John, why do you join your class? Why do you join class when your microphone is on? I've muted John. Okay, so we shall just return a minus b. Now remember, I explained to you what the public static void string. I'm sure you know what this does. So this is basically to execute that source code within the public class. So we shall just call calculator, I think that would be the best. But take note that Java is case sensitive. So, and please also take note on the what? Indentation. Now we shall do int, then we shall try to sum, then we shall use the calculator dot. What should we pass in? We shall pass in two values. Can pass in maybe like 5 and 10. It's called my network is kind of unstable today. You just have to bear with me. Okay. Just to double check that everyone is seeing my screen. Are you all seeing my screen before I continue writing the script? Let me know in the chat. Add the next, or anyone can use the reaction button so that I know that we are in the same class. Okay, there's something in the chat. Okay, Arinda says yes. Slightly laggy. You are audible, sir. Okay, I think this is perfect. Now we can create difference. Here, guys, you even don't see the errors. I told you Java is case sensitive. If I make an error, try to type something in the chat. Don't just follow me blindly. So now we're going to output the summations. Now what it does here is that we have the sum here, and then we have, okay, we basically have the sum here. So what to do is I'll try Then we can have the sum, then terminate that. Oh, okay. I don't know. Okay. So this is supposed to be method. Method. Okay. Anything serious? Okay, that's okay. So there's a variable which is not used here for difference, which you can still do system dot out print difference. All right, so I think this code basically demonstrates what we call methods in Java. And I've already said that when you're dealing with methods in Java, you're basically trying to execute a block of code that performs specific task. And of course, I explained to you how you can use key concepts which are related in Java, like method signature, method body, this is what they call, let me just explain to the source from the source code, okay? Then what is within the curly braces is called what is called the method, is called the method body that is executed when the method is called and is enclosed in a curly braces. So let's try to run this code and see. So you could see clearly that given the fact that our A is 5 and our B is 10, when you try to get the difference, we will get a negative value. When you sum, we get that. And of course, this is exactly how you demonstrate the use of methods in Java. But that's not the main thing that we are supposed to cover in Module 3. Our focus in Module 3 is basically to allow us understand what we call defining and calling methods. Now, I'm just going to explain simple concepts that can help you understand what we call defining a method and calling a method using the examples that we have used. Is that okay? So let me know in the chat if you have successfully understood methods in Java. Let me know, you could type one in the chat to let me know that you're following. We will have a test this week, and it's going to be a quick quiz that you can use. Your network is not stable. John, John, is my network stable? Please, I don't want to have this marathon talk alone. Let's have it engaging.
So you're on and off. Wait, it's lagging.
It's lagging. Hopefully the recording will be helpful. But am I on and off right now? In the past 10 minutes?
Right now you're stable.
I'm stable. If I'm not stable, please, I could also repeat some of the concepts. Are we all good? Are we all good up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oluka, you haven't said anything today. Is everything going on well? Am I fast?
It's normal. I am trying to follow the codes because I was trying to run mine here, but it wasn't giving me the results. I was trying to check where the error was.
What are you using? Are you using the VS Code or the JDoodle?
I was using the VS.
Okay. No, I'll later put the source code into the Git repository. Are you guys able to pull the request when I push it into the Git repository? When I commit the source code, are you able to pull the source code from the GitHub? You guys are programmers. You should understand the language I'm speaking, right? Hello. Okay, you'll go ahead and watch the recordings. But let me know if you have a challenge with the GitHub. I hope all of you have accounts in the GitHub and you're able to pull the source code. Maybe later I'll try to create a update class on how to use the GitHub repository. Okay, so that is it. What they call defining method and then calling method. Now let's use this typical example. Like I'm seeing my internet connection is unstable. You'll excuse me today, I'm using a Wi-Fi. I'm not connecting directly to the LAN. But otherwise this should be okay. Now what I'm going to explain here briefly is that when we look at, we now want to understand defining and calling. But please, also when I share the ebook notes, please read this stuff. Class, I think. So what we're trying to say here is that when defining and calling methods in Java, okay, we look at some fundamental aspects of writing codes. Now, specifically, when we look at a code being written, just like the way I've written this, we need to see what are the access modifiers, what are the protected, what are the returns, what are the method numbers, the meta name, I mean, and the parameter type. So literally, I'm going to explain this on this code one by one, okay? Now, this part here where we have this source code here, this is what they call the public. This public here is the access modifier, indicating that the method is accessible from any class, whether being the method class, whether being a class like from, okay, we have, yeah, it can be accessed from any class. Then the add method here basically means actually add is a method name, and that method name, when we pass in the parameters, when we define the parameters like A and B, which is the int parameters, int definitely accepts numerical values. Now, this is what we refer as what? The add name. Add it's actually a method when you point to it on the VS Code. Then the int A and int B defines two integer parameters, A and B. Now, calling methods in Java, basically, we try to use something. Let's try to look at it here in this source code where we have, okay. okay, here, where I have this part where we say method calculator. So what this does, it creates an instance of the method class. Please, this name can be to anything. I believe you know this, but it creates an instance. In difference, these two are what we call, let me just comment this. Let me comment this in the, I think commenting is the best way for you to understand the source code, right? So, okay, it's here. So it creates an instance of the calculator. No, of the method class. Remember, we have a method class. Then these two, this one will what? We'll call the add method, and then this will call the add method. So literally that's what it means with the define and call the method. I'll try to share some of this source code with you tonight so that you can practice them and then understand them. So literally that's what it means with calling the method. Now our next key concept that we need to look at it, which is actually a more important concept that you need to understand, is called method overloading. It's called method overloading. Wow. Do you know what method overloading means in Java? Actually, the pretty much much more simpler way to say it is that method overloading. Let me just have this as a multi-comment. So method overloading in Java allows you to define multiple methods with the same name in the same class. Now, but at some point is that with the different parameter lists, okay? But with different parameter list. So what it does is that when you invoke an overloaded method, the Java compiler will determine the appropriate method to call based on the number or the types of arguments provided. Now, method overloading provides flexibility and convenience, making it easier to work with methods that perform similar tasks but with varying input data. Now, there are some rules that you need to follow. Rules for method overloading. Please take note of these rules. Rule number one, before we look at method overloading in practice, is that rule number one, overloaded methods must be within the same class. Then that is rule number one. Then rule number two is that the overloaded method must have what? Must have different parameters. Take note on rules of method overloading. Then rule three, there are actually only 4 rules. Then rule three is that the overloaded methods must have different parameter list. So either in terms of the number of parameter or the data types. Of parameters. Then the last rule is that rule 4, the return type does not play a role in method overloading. Basically, those are the 4 rules. Rule number 1, overloaded method must be within the same class. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, the overloaded method must have the same name. The overloaded method must have, what did I say here? I think I just need to, the overloaded method must have the same name. Now, the third one is that the overloaded methods, the overloaded method must have different parameter lists, either in terms of the number of parameters or the data types of parameters. Then rule 4 is that the return type does not play a role in method overloading. The return type does not play a role in the method overloading. Now we're going to look at method overloading with a typical example. So let's try to, I know we already have some script up, but as a software developer, you understand that you can comment that out so that you don't see it in what? So that you don't see it, so that you don't see it in your output. Now, we're going to deal with method overloading. We're just on top of our 1 hour of this discussion, but we will play it simple. So this is going to be our example too. Please, if you've not been following, can you please follow this example? Now, what you're going to do, we're just going to do the same task, but here we will just try to use a method that will add 2 numbers. So let's see how we can do this. We shall create an instance which is called math operator class, but I think we don't need to call it math operator. We can still maintain our class method, then it will be our instance class. And then later we can demonstrate overloading of add with different parameter lists. The appropriate one will be how we will provide our arguments. But remember that method overloading is one of the powerful features that simplifies the use of methods within different arguments. Okay, so it makes our code more intuitive and user friendly. So let's demonstrate this practically. If you can understand this method overloading, then you can look at method overriding, then you can summarize this with recursion. So I think that would be the end of module. It will be the end of module 3. So we'll be remaining with 5 modules to finish up in this semester. So hopefully we'll finish. I'll try to make sure that I engage you on the pre-recorded classes so that you can have it on our online classes so that you're not left behind. Yeah, but I know we are moving much faster compared to the weekend group. So let's look at a typical example of method overloading. The syntax will not change. We're basically going to add numbers. Is that okay? But we try to add using instances of integers and double. And you know double is more precise when dealing with floating point numbers. So let's see how we can play around with this script. So we will still maintain our main class example of method overloading. So what we're going to do, we will create method overloading in Java. So we will just say public class, then we shall call it method. Now, in the method, just simple calculation here. In method, we are going to have the method to add 2 integers. So one will be the public int, then add. Then what we are going to do, we're going to have the int a, int b. So okay. Okay, let's try to what it will return a plus b, simple from what we've been doing. And then or what we can do, so here we can have a method to add 3 integers. So we will have public int add int then int b, we're adding 3 integers, then int c. Okay. Now what you can do, you can return a plus b plus c. Okay. Doubles. Method to add. Public double add then we'll return a b. Now what we're going to do basically here is just simple. What you do, we have the double. Now we're going to create the main class here. We are going to get the arguments, which is going to be public, static, main, then you can say method math equal to new method. Okay. Yeah, then you can do system out, system, then you get the additions of the 3 numbers, 2 numbers, 3 numbers. It's going to be system out, sum of 2 integer. Then it's going to be math dot add. So then we can put in some 2 numbers. Let's still have our 10 and 5. That's totally okay. Then we do this. We can do 10. We can do 5. And you can do 3. Then the last one is going to be system dot out dot print, which is going to be sum of double. Now, let's try to work with floating points, decimal places, right? Now we're going to deal with values that have decimal places. Okay. Hope this is more precise. Okay. Oh, we're missing our single. Okay. Let's just make sure these parentheses are well are closed so that we still have about 4 problems in our script. How many problems do we have? Wow. Let's check on the problems. So return type for the method is missing. And then the syntax error to complete the arguments. Okay. I think basically this is A. Oh, there are actually 2. Mm. Mm. Okay. I'm trying to make sure that we don't have any problem. Okay, you just have to find out. Um, okay, so let's look at the lines. There's line 101. Public static. Okay. So we're done with line 101. Then there is line 107. Okay. Sum of 3 integer math add. Okay. Let's redo this and see, which is going to be 5, 3. Okay. Wow. Finally fixed that error. Okay. So let's run. So it should just show us the additions of these 3 numbers using what they call method overloading. And it has successfully run the sum of 2 integers, the sum of 3 integers, and the sum of 2 doubles. That's how we can treat method overloading in Java. Any question to this point? So what it means, basically, the main method we created, it helps to create an instance with the method. Remember, our main class is called method. Now from there, it is able to what? To get for us, it's able to provide for us the instances that is called based on this base method. And we're able to demonstrate method overloading from add with 3 what? With 3 methods here. So method of arguments or variables, and it makes our code more intuitive and user friendly. Now, I want us to, okay, I just want us to stop here today so that I can leave the other 2 for Thursday class so that we can finish it. We can just finish it next time. I don't want to overload your brain, because if I do method overloading and I do method overriding, there's going to be a little bit of confusion of the content. Maybe any suggestion to this point? Remember, when we are doing online, let's have a small discussion. Do you wish I extend with one more example? But these examples are enough. Hello.
So
Am
we
I
can
talking
have
to
one
my-
more example.
Then that means we can do method overriding. That means we are going to be left with only recursion next week. Is that okay? Not next week, on Thursday.
Alternatively, if it's possible to, but you said you might share tonight. I don't know if the recording was available as early
It
as
will-
we could, so we could practice on it again.
Okay. Auntie, when I do a 1 hour, this because this recording is almost like 1 hour 20 minutes. It won't take it will even be too long for you. Remember, I'm doing this without breaks.
Then we can stop here, sir. Let's just have the recording and we can follow. Then we start from there on Thursday.
Okay, so on Thursday, we are going to be looking at method overriding. Okay, now, okay, let me do method overriding. Then we shall just repeat it next time. Is that okay? I will extend with.
No. Not okay, sir.
Not okay. Yeah, I know what programming is all about because when I keep piling you with some of these small contexts, you may not even follow up. Okay, we're going to do method overriding next time and method and recursion only. Then we shall finish module 3. Then we shall start on module 4. I think we are moving on well. We are doing only 8 modules for this semester. All right, let me stop the recording so that the recording comes fast.